right now it's handing our program over to you. You can tell us how you went, any questions you got. Sam Edmund knows the space as well as any person on the planet. Big winners, big losers, concerns, great trades, where it all sits. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Josh Dunkley. I mean, that deal done just after 7 o'clock. We're looking forward to talk to Liam Pickering a little bit later on. The preseason draft had loomed, of course. In the end, with the Dogs wanting 2 first-round picks, the best they could get was obviously the pick 21 this year, a future third-round selection the Dogs got back, and a future fourth as well. And the future fourth was the haggling in the end. So they got 21 and a future first, plus a future fourth, which is tied to Geelong. So that was the big sticking point, the Josh Dunkley one. In the end, I reckon Brisbane have done pretty well, Garry. Like, I mean, they've had the most difficult hand to deal with in the sense they've had to get the later picks in. They don't want those early picks absorbed for their father's sons. And so they also need those pointy end picks for Josh Dunkley as well. So in the end, they get Gunston on a trade to preserve the Dan McStay compensation and Dunkley as well.
Yep.
They don't have a pointy end pick, but they didn't want one. So they've got a glut of picks from 30 to 70, enough points to match those bids now. The question is, prelim final this year, does this do enough to suggest they can take that final next step?
And this is Mick who says, Garry, what's the knock on the Lions? Dunks is a good inclusion, I would have thought. No, he is. I'm not knocking them in that sense at all. They'll be contending again, but my concern for them is the area of the ground that gave them the most issues last year wasn't necessarily their ability to score goals or their midfield. It was their ability to defend in the back half. And they got exposed and opened up a bit at times during the season. But no, they're going to be better. So they're a preliminary finalists already. They're going to be better. It's just whether or not they can bridge the gap and get themselves into a grand final and win one.
Melbourne, so they get 2 Western Bulldogs players. They get Lockie Hunter in and Josh Shackey. Now, Lockie Hunter for a future third. We did raise him as a trade option on SEN a couple of weeks ago.
Are they paying some of his wage?
Yes, he's got 2 years to run on a contract, Lockie Hunter. Now, his manager is Paul Connors, who's part of the Connors stable. So both parties have decided that it might just be time for a fresh start. Player to club, club to player, premiership player, 27 years of age. What are Melbourne getting here? And is there an element of Lockie Hunter that needs to be harnessed?
Yes. So he's now a Melbourne player, so Melbourne supporters embrace him and go, okay, he'll be given every chance. But he's had some issues. I'm not talking out of school. We know he's had some issues, and off-field more so than on. I hope he walks into the club and that Max Gawn and Jack Viney grab him and take him into a room and go, mate, we're over the moon having you here, but this is the way we're going to operate, and this is the way we do things here, and this is what we will tolerate, and this is what we won't. So that conversation needs to be had, Sam, which is what happens when players move clubs for reasons. You know, clearly he's had some issues there. He gets a clean go at it, and when you're talking about whether you get better, Melbourne's one of their biggest issues, as for me as a watcher over the years, has been their inability to make the most of their ball going forward. Their inside 50 connection is their ball use going forward in inside 50 was horrendous, like beyond horrendous. He helps them with that. He's a very good ball user. He's got a massive tank. He can play on that wing on the other side. So he's a best and fairest winner. So that would be the reason. But there will be a watch on, the professionalism and the ability to knuckle down and do all the things that need to be done.
Indeed. And minutes after Wiedemann left, Josh Shackey comes in. So, almost a like for like. Sam Wiedemann, you can understand, leaving to join Essendon for more opportunities.
Backup, isn't it?
Yep. And Wiedemann linked to that Francis deal that we always knew was going to happen. Just before we get to the calls, the big trade, probably one of the biggest ones was a 3-way trade with Mitchell, Henry and Cooper Stevens. Collingwood weren't going to budge. They weren't going to budge. They weren't going to budge.
They
budged. And they got 25 for him in the end. So the Cats get Ollie Henry and 25 gets passed on as well. They basically hand Hawthorn Cooper Stevens that we spoke about earlier for nothing, and Hawthorn for losing Tom Mitchell. They get picks 41 and 50, those 2 third-rounders
I like them
as
all.
well.
I like all 3 of them. And you can argue the picks and all that stuff all you want. I like the 3 of them. You look at your areas of the game that you need to be fixed. One of the few problems that Collingwood had over the journey was first possession in the middle of the ground, as the clearance stuff was poor. Now, whether or not they were that concerned about it is problematic, but if you can get someone who can get first possession and then help, then good. And Tom Mitchell does that.
It's not a bad deal for Collingwood. So they do give up 25, but in the end they get Mitchell.
That's okay. That's okay. I reckon Tom Mitchell is going to be better than a 25 pick he would have taken at the draft.
A super professional as well. So for all the things we say he can't do, as you say, his one wood is immense.
And Ollie Henry going back home, good on him. He's going to have to work hard and be good to get into that side. And Cooper Stevens will play footy at Hawthorn, who are... That's the way they're operating. He's the perfect fit. He's young, he's highly promising, and they're going to have a few years of sorting out their list and getting them going. So I think that was a beauty.
And the Dogs super busy as well. Lost Dunkley. In the end, they did get Lob in the last couple of minutes for 30 and a future second round selection that they got from the Lions in that Dunkley deal. So that was one of the last ones done.
Hopefully Stephen May doesn't invite Hunter out for dinner. That's from Gav. Nice point, Gary. You realise the Lions were without Marcus Adams all final series. We also beat the... Yeah, no, I do. You beat the reigning premiers in the 2020... Yep, I do. That's why you're going to be there again knocking on the door. But... for me, someone had him as the premiership favourite. That's all I'm saying. I haven't got him as the premiership favourite. I want to see how they defend, but they will be there at the pointy end once again. And if you're a Brisbane Lions supporter, that's all you can hope for.
Yep. And the Dockers, not bad piece of business from them either. I mean, to get Jackson in, to get Jager O'Meara in as well. Lloyd Meek goes, but he's purely depth anyway. And they had to give up a future second along with that. But that's not... They had to pay a lot, Fremantle.
Yep.
But gee whiz,
generational, 10, 12 years, well played Tigers, well played Port. I think he's got television crews that just track him wherever he goes these days.
I think that's absolutely correct, Garry.
His name's Robbie D'Orazio. He looks after the likes of Brodie Grundy,
Hopper,
Bowes, Blakely, Steen. He's got all sorts of players. And he's got the job done again. He joins us. Go, Rob.
Sam, how are we?
We're good. Are you filming this just for purposes that we need to know? Is this being, are we on another sort of documentary style setup?
No, Gary. That's Colin Young yesterday had the teeth whitened and the tight shirt doing his thing. So I'll leave that to Colin and the crew. But no, look, it was a good day yesterday. We sort of did our stuff early, and the great Paul Connors got Lockie Hunter over the line to the D's, your Demons. So. No camera crew at the moment, mate.
We'll talk about all the things you did get done, which was plenty. I just want to start with the one that didn't quite get over the line, if you don't mind, Robbie, and that's obviously Hunter Clark from the Saints to North Melbourne. A lot of St Kilda supporters just wanting to know how this might have played out initially in terms of how it was even raised, and then ultimately why it didn't go down.
Yeah, in the end, it was a discussion between James Garry and myself, Simon Lethlean. The old word mature conversation was sort of, out early. We spoke. Hunter's had a really interrupted career, hasn't he? Top 10 pick, highly talented. One of my favourite players to manage, and I think St Kilda supporters are probably looking at that, saying, "Yeah, we haven't seen the best of him yet." So there was discussions throughout the year, some injuries that you just don't see happen on a footy field. Obviously, his jaw got basically wrapped around his head early, in his career by that bump up in Cairns, and then the sickening incident with his teammate with the headbutt. So he's had some injuries that don't, usually happen on a footy field. And Gags and I were just chatting throughout the year about maybe it's best for a fresh start. So we were looking at that. We had those conversations, and look, he's contracted. So in the end, it was up to the Saints to make the call. And despite some early conversations with clubs, and probably one in particular that wanted to go down that path, St Kilda weren't satisfied with where it sat and decided to keep a hold of him. And, Lenny Hayes is going there now as a coach, and we're really excited for Lenny to get his hands on Hunter and go to work with him because he's got a lot of talent and probably hasn't achieved that yet.
So what do you think happens now with him? Obviously going into the last year of a contract, is it a case that he'll now re-sign, or he'd look to move in 12 months' time? Can you look into your crystal ball, or are all options on the table?
All options are open. I don't think we'd sign anything early. I think we'll definitely see him play and see how it goes. I think when a club's happy to look at a trade, you've probably got to think about what they're thinking about your player. So we'll sit back and look at that. As I said before, Hunter's one of my favourite players, and I think that we all haven't been the best yet, like unbelievable talent. And hopefully St Kilda can get him going and he can get himself going, and it's it's happy for everybody. But if it's not, we'll see where it sits.
We're sitting here in 12 months' time. What will we be saying about Brodie Grundy's first year at Melbourne?
Well, hopefully a premiership and a ruck duo that's taken them there. That'd be you said to me what the crystal ball is. It's been an interesting trade period in regards to Brodie. I know you and I had a quick chat grand final evening about it, and we sat and I listened to the commentary, which I shouldn't because it can get quite frustrating at times. But you got to cop that. Look, Tim Lamb, Simon Goodwin and the team there have obviously seen Jackson go out and needed to replace that position, and Brodie became available. So I think if a two-time All-Australian ruckman becomes available with an age that's 3 years younger than the guy he's currently got, let's wait and see. But yeah, if you said to me where to sit, hopefully it's the Demons holding the flag and Brodie front and centre.
Robbie, can you educate us for a moment just on the contribution from clubs to players who aren't on their list? Now, we know the high-profile guys like Treloar and Grundy and obviously Bowes this time around, but for those of us outside, perhaps slow on the uptake, would you say it's a relatively common occurrence in the modern game? And if it's not relatively common, is it increasing all the time?
It's becoming more relevant, that's for sure. I think that player movement's becoming a bigger thing in the game. I think that clubs are getting more aggressive, players are becoming more aggressive with their managers, but for different reasons. There's a go-home factor, there's opportunity, there's money, there's incentives. But I think anything that impacts player movement's good for the AFL. I think the AFL likes players moving around for opportunity and the game getting better. So if lists can get better and players can get more opportunity, it means clubs have to get more tricky with their salary cap, then that's I think good for the game and healthy, and it will become more relevant as time goes on.
Was Jack Bowes, no one knew who Jack Bowes was, I don't think 4 or 5 months ago. Was that one of the biggest deals you've ever done?
I knew who Jack Bowes was, Sam. He's a very good young player who's unfortunately had some injuries and played in a pretty strong midfield up there in the Gold Coast and got pushed out of there. And Stewie, due to his credit, he plays, doesn't flick many through there in the midfield. So he's happy to stick with the 4 or the 5 that go through there. And Jack had an opportunity, through injury to have a look. And he's a top 10 pick. I spoke to a club yesterday out there at Marvel, and one club had him pick 1 in their draft, on their draft board in that draft. I openly said it to me yesterday. He's highly talented, and I think that, again, let's just reserve our judgment and see how it all unfolds next year, because I said yesterday, Chris Scott, Patrick Dangerfield, they're all really excited to get him in there and working hard and playing midfield time and other positions as well. But look, we'll wait to see again where it all sits at this time next year.
Why did Lockie Hunter need a fresh start?
I think Paul said after the trade happened last night, that's Paul Connors, probably just, probably needed a fresh start. He's obviously made some mistakes over his journey since that premiership at the Bulldogs, and have some lifelong friends. And, it comes to time when maybe you look at each other and you say, maybe it is best time that if I go to my trade somewhere else, it'll be better for both of us. So no hard feelings there. I know Bevo and him have remained good friends and go to premiership reunions. And to his credit, Lockie needs to take some responsibility as well, and he'll do that and get to work and work really hard with Ed Langdon on the opposite wing. And as I said before, if I was a Melbourne supporter, I'd be pretty excited. And done with no animosity. It was a nicely dealt trade, and everybody leaves happy. So I think we'll see again with where Lockie ends up with his footy, and I'm quite excited for him. But no anger there, guys. It was all in good faith.
Well, that's good. Are they contributing some of his salary?
I'm actually not sure on that one. I let Paul do that one. I was too busy looking at Colin Young's teeth.
you had your documentary to run. You couldn't get involved in everything.
Jacob Hopper, we just rewind for a minute. Obviously saw him paraded at Richmond yesterday and looks thrilled, and they are with him, which you can understand. And we've joked about Damien Hardwick getting the manicure. Such was his happiness as well. But rewinding, the competition for him, I know Geelong were an interested party for a while there. Was it just essentially a 2-horse race for him in the end that Richmond won out on?
In the end, it was. But again, you're talking to clubs the whole year. So, I'm sure that, I heard Garry before saying I'll go on holidays. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Straight away, the clubs are already looking at next year and who's a free agent, or who's out of contract, the pre-agents, things like that. So clubs do a lot of work early. Hops would have had 5, 6, 7, 8 clubs inquire when it became apparent that there was an opportunity for him to leave a year early on his contract. But in the end, Geelong and Richmond were the 2 clubs that came down to the wire, and it was I didn't know which way he was going to go until he made the call. So it was really close. I think in the end he wanted to live in Melbourne rather down the coast. So we'll see how that all unfolds, and playing in front of 90,000 at the G instead of 12,000 somewhere else is pretty exciting for him.
Robbie D'Orazio is the man we're speaking to. Before you head off to the yacht in the Bahamas, Connor Blakely, Jake Steen. What these two boys, can we get a home for them at some stage?
They're two of our boys that I think will end up on list somewhere. So Connor Blakely's obviously been at Fremantle, signed a 3-year deal 3 years ago and didn't really get an opportunity after he did that, which was quite astonishing. But I think he'll get a home somewhere. We're just working through that in the next little bit. And Steenie's the GWS backman who came from a Cap B. He was one that I was surprised actually got delisted. He played some good footy late under Mark McVeigh. And then Jason McCartney sort of gave him the chop, which is fine. We just got to move on from that, and hopefully we can we'll get him on a list somewhere, which I'm working on at the moment. So, fingers crossed that all works out for both the boys.
The old chop. Just one last cheeky one before we let you go, Robbie. Then you mentioned the pre-agents and perhaps those of amongst your stable who are out of contract next year. Who would you say the phone is ringing the hottest for at the moment?
I actually haven't even looked at it properly like that, Sam, at the minute. And my wife actually had me chopping wood this morning, so that's a good I've been going.
Dry, I hope.
Hey, what's that?
Dry, I hope.
Yeah, no, dry wood. The weather's just turned, hasn't it? So I'll, fingers crossed I get today and to look at it and move forward. But I actually haven't got the listening for me at the minute.
No worries.
A little spray tan and away you go, Rob. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Congratulations on the trade period. Another successful one for you and Jake in Connor Sports Management.
Thanks, guys.
Robbie D'Orazio joining us there. He gets the job done. Very good operator.
Yep.
And I just enjoy talking to him. I like him.
You've known him for a long time.
Long time. Long.
Back when he was
Back when he was Robbie Ginepri. That was his other name that he used to go by. And he's the manager of Josh Dunkley.
I think he's a legend.
Yeah, he is a legend, no question. And that's what Josh Dunkley would be thinking because he's got his wish. He's found his way to the Brisbane Lions and he joins us. Picks, well done.
Yeah, thank you, Garry. G'day, Sammy. How are you, boys?
Hello, Liam. I'm just glad it's over, as I'm sure you are, because it means people like me won't be ringing you. How many times a day on average do you reckon?
Oh, God, I tell you what, I'm going to have to put a restraining order out on you. You keep ringing me every 5 minutes. I couldn't get any work done.
Well, not too much of an exaggeration, but hey, a happy ending in the end, and mixture of. Look, you've seen many of these rodeos before, but I imagine a heavy dose of relief at the end when it's all done and dusted.
Yeah, that's what you're talking. It's relief, yeah. I mean, it went down to the wire as we thought it would. I thought it would all the way along, actually. But both clubs, were trying to get the best deal for themselves, as you'd expect. But, I mean, in the middle of all that was Josh. So, he said to him, just go back. He went back to the bush. He was with his family. So, just hope, it'll all get sorted, which we thought it would.
I'm just relieved. I thought for a moment there we might have had a sequel to the famous veal deal that you're involved with back in the day. But what took so long then? I mean, why was it played out over such a long period of time, and why wasn't it done perhaps a bit more efficiently?
Oh, I think, as I said, there's always a value you put on a player, and when Bulldogs' value on Josh, all of a sudden the minute Tirano was done, that seemed to be the benchmark. So. They use that as a benchmark as to that. That's what a best and fairest winner should be getting, and premiership player, etc., etc. So that's the value they put on him, and that's understandable. I mean, he's their player. We believe in them, but he's their current best and fairest winner. So it's the value that they put on, and the Lions had a few, as you know, had a few other things going on with their points and whatnot. So and then Gunston come out of nowhere and they got him as well. So there's a bit to work through, but I mean, we're always confident it was going to get done.
So he's got there, which is great, and he'll make them better, no question about it. Why do you want to leave, Pickers? I haven't spoken to Josh clearly and probably haven't followed it as closely as everyone else, but why did he want to leave on the back of a best and fairest? They played in the grand final 2 years ago. He's won a premiership with them. Why did he want out?
Well, he's keen to start his life in another state, Gaz. He wants to go and live in Queensland, and Brisbane are the right fit, and it was just time for him to go. His girl's over in Adelaide playing, but she's a Queensland girl, so that was what he wanted to do. And, obviously there were a few clubs interested in him. I mean, Port Adelaide, Essendon, obviously Bulldogs themselves, but Brisbane. So in the end, he had a few choices, but Brisbane thought was the best fit for him.
The manager's role in a situation like this, Liam, when the two clubs are butting heads and the Dogs are saying they're going to walk into the pre-season draft and the player might be a bit stressed out and there's anger on both sides. Did you take a side here? I mean, perhaps unfairly you were seen to perhaps side more with the club that was trying to get the player in Brisbane, but the delicate, I guess, path that you need to tread as a manager in these situations?
I took the side of the player. So what was the best way to get that done was, in my view, was to not antagonise the Bulldogs any more than my colleagues. The Hutchins sort of got out of me on Saturday morning. That was pretty much my view anyway. I mean, to walk in the pre-season draft and get nothing for a player of his ability would have been a silly thing to do. So that's basically what I said Saturday. Angered a few, and I thought, well, there's not much point me trying to negotiate with the Dogs. I've been down this road before with them 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the Edmund scenario was bubbling away, but he was contracted, and in the end, Sammy will do what Sammy wants to do, and so it's up to the clubs. So I laugh at the player manager should be running into that room and running into this room. It's a whole lot of rot, really.
Mm.
I just needed to deal with with the Lions, and just make sure that the Lions were working in the best interest of my client to get the deal done, which is basically what we did. So all the theatrics of blokes running in and out of rooms, it's just a lot of rot, really.
And how did Josh handle it? You mentioned 2 years ago when it was obviously would have been really stressful for him and it didn't work out. And I imagine those memories might come to the surface, at 6:30 last night. How did he live through it all?
Well, it was funny. I mean, a couple of nights ago, he got started to get a bit jittery. And then when he came down to Melbourne, we all went around and caught up with Dom Ambrosio, the list manager of the Lions. So with his dad, I said, come on, bring Andrew down. So the three of us went around there, and Dom mapped out how it was going to all play out, which it pretty much did. So Josh then went back to the bush, and we had a bit of lunch, and then he went back to the bush, and he seemed a lot more relaxed yesterday throughout the course of the day. I think he was just really comfortable what was going to get done, and in the end, he wasn't a nervous wreck, which was good.
Mm. Did you think it was legitimate, the threat to send him to the pre-season draft? Did you envisage that being some chance, any chance, if it got to it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did, actually. They're a stubborn lot. The Dogs, they can be stubborn. And that was the messaging that they got through, the messages that I received and, that they'd said publicly and that was being put into the media that they were going to walk him. So, yeah, of course I thought that might happen. Yeah, but, I didn't think it would be the smart thing to do from a footy club's perspective. I would have thought they'd be pretty disappointed because if they didn't do Josh and they sent him there, they wouldn't have got Lob. So they would have lost Dunkley, Lob, and, 21 in the future first and the future second. So, I mean, it would have been a pretty big move if they hadn't done the deal, but they did in the end, which was the main thing.
Got Liam Pickering on the line here. You know how this works. We've got the text message zinging along. Some are happy, some aren't happy. What do you say to those that think that there's this great divide that's emerging in the competition with the teams up the top half? Certainly the Cats have been magnificent. They're potentially going to have 4 first-rounders come into a premiership team. You've got the Tigers who have 2 retiring and introduce 2 first-rounders back. And then you've got the other teams down the bottom. Are you concerned about it?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The players, the market seems to have just been really skewed towards going and joining a successful team that's already successful. So, I feel for the clubs down in the bottom and the clubs that really can't attract the players. And hopefully there's a way that it can be done. I'm not sure what it is because in the end it's free agency and people can choose where they want to go. And trade period, you've still got to be able to stump up the deal. So, I do feel a bit for the teams that are being rated near the bottom. I must say that, you need smarter people than me to work out what the best thing to do is to be able to make it a little bit more even. But from the Cats perspective, I'm thrilled with what they've done.
Oh, they were magnificent.
But if you look at the teams that actually have come out of it pretty good, you're right. They're all the teams at the top. So, Richmond had a terrific period, Brisbane, of course, and Geelong. There's 3. The Dogs, well, they lost Dunks, but they've got in Lob. That's someone that they wanted. So, Collingwood did pretty well, I think. So, look, it's something there is an issue there. I've got no doubt there's an issue there. They need to work it out, or whether the teams that are near the bottom need to work a different strategy. I'm not sure, but it's going to be pretty difficult if you're getting all the good teams are getting all the good players all the time.
Liam, one of your best clients, best players, Carl Amon, exercised his free agent rights and joined Hawthorn, which was great. That happened obviously very early in the piece. Subsequent to that, one of the talking points obviously been the exodus of experience at Hawthorn. Did you and Carl know that was going to happen, or is Carl waking up this morning thinking, what on earth just happened there?
No, I'm not convinced. No, I didn't know about it. I didn't know that was going to be that many of those players that were actually going to be on the move. You'd heard a couple, obviously, that have been talked about, but Shit happened late. It wasn't an exodus. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be young. Now, it's not something that was sold to Carl, but he'll be right. He's a Brazilian young bloke, and he's really looking forward to getting to Hawthorn. So he'll go in there and it's just probably one of the most experienced players now.
Yeah. And some of your other clients. So Jed Anderson, can you let us in on a lot of North Melbourne people listening, or where he might be at in terms of he's out of contract at the moment, where things might be at with him?
Now, still working through that with North Melbourne at the moment. So there was a chance that he was going to get to the Gold Coast, but when Braden Fiorini couldn't get to another club, I think it was Collingwood was talking to him, then it meant they didn't have a list spot Gold Coast. They would have taken Jed, and we pretty much agreed to that on the proviso that Fiorini got to Collingwood or got to Essendon or wherever else he was talking. But we'll work through it with North. I mean, he's out of contract, but I'm confident that he's good enough to be getting a contract at North, and hopefully that's where it'll all roll out.
And I've got him scribbled down here. He needs a change of luck, that's for sure. But Sammy Simpson down at Geelong, things trending in the right direction there, would we say?
Yeah, they're trending okay. Yeah, Sammy, is I said no luck to poor bugger. He's a bloody good player too, and I expect him to beat the Cats next year.
Pix, great to talk to you, mate. Thanks for sharing some time at the end of a hectic trade period, and well done on last night. In the end, Josh Dunkley, you got your player where he wanted to go, which is the main thing. Really appreciate it.